I'm 33 years old and I come from one of those big, noisy families where every Sunday dinner feels like a full-blown event, and don't even get me started on holidays. There's always food, laughter, and way more drama than anyone asks for. It's the kind of family where privacy doesn't exist. If you've got a secret, you better believe it'll be halfway around the group chat before you even finish whispering it. And at the heart of that whirlwind? My Aunt Carla. She's basically declared herself the unofficial boss of the family. Early 50s, loud laugh, and this uncanny ability to say just the right thing to make you uncomfortable, but always with a smile, especially when there's an audience around. Behind the scenes, though, Carla's got a mental filing cabinet of everyone's screw-ups, heartbreaks, and lowest moments, just waiting for the right time to dig them up and throw them like darts. She hosted a family dinner last weekend. I skipped it. Work kept me late, but honestly, I didn't mind. Carla's dinners never exactly scream, relaxing evening. One of the few people I'm close with, my cousin Rachel, she's 23, went, and she called me first thing the next morning. She sounded winded, like she jogged straight through the phone. "You're not gonna believe what Carla was saying about you last night," she said. Apparently, Carla had turned me into the night's entertainment. She told the whole table I was too lazy to show up and acted like I've always thought I was better than everyone. Then she dragged up my last breakup, implying I was too much to handle and would probably die alone. For some context, my ex, Sophie, and I broke things off about 8 months ago. It was quiet, not dramatic, just the end of something that wasn't working. But Carla? She's got a talent for spinning things to sound way worse than they ever were. My stomach twisted just hearing it. Rachel said she tried to steer the talk elsewhere, but Carla wasn't done. She doubled down, saying I'd been coasting through life and would probably be unemployed if I didn't get serious. It wasn't just cruel, it felt calculated, like she'd been sitting on those opinions waiting for the perfect audience. And it's not like this was new behavior. Carla's been like this forever. Back in college, she'd make jabs about my major, communications, as if it were a joke degree. She's called my mom, her own sister, selfish more times than I can count. Once, she even told me dead serious that my brother must be cheating because no marriage is that perfect. The worst part? The family just lets her do it. They shrug, say it's not worth the argument. But I'm done letting it slide. In the days that followed, I reached out to a few relatives to see if this was just me or if Carla had been stirring up other messes too. Turns out what she said about me was just scratching the surface. She'd also been taking shots at Rachel, calling her irresponsible for traveling instead of settling down. She made a petty dig about my mom borrowing money last year, twisting it to make her sound reckless with money. And the cherry on top? She told one cousin that another cousin's husband was cheating, no evidence, just another nasty little rumor. It hit me then, this wasn't just about me. Carla had made a sport out of tearing people down. I wasn't just mad anymore. I was fired up for myself, for my mom, for Rachel, for all of us. She'd been getting away with this forever because no one wanted to rock the boat. But I wasn't going to let her keep skating by. I started thinking about how I could confront her in a way she couldn't twist into me overreacting, which she's a pro at. Rachel and I put our heads together. If we were going to do this, we had to come prepared. Carla's a master at deflecting and making people second-guess themselves. So we started gathering what Rachel jokingly called receipts. I saved her texts detailing exactly what Carla had said. Then I reached out to my mom and a couple cousins, asked them what they heard. It felt like building a court case, only instead of facing a judge, we'd be facing our entire extended family. And soon enough, the chance came. Carla sent out invites for another family gathering. Word got back to her that I was upset and she went straight into damage control, telling people I was just being sensitive, that I was blowing things out of proportion. But this time, the family wasn't all buying it. Maybe they were tired of walking on eggshells. Maybe they'd all been burned by her too. Either way, I knew this get-together was my shot and I wasn't going to waste it. By the time the weekend hit, I was ready. This wasn't just about me anymore. I was standing up for everyone Carla had cut down for all the years we kept quiet. It was time someone said enough. The gathering was at Carla's house, the same place this whole mess had started. The air felt tense the moment I walked in. People talked quieter than usual. I caught a few glances. Carla was in the kitchen, playing the doting host like nothing was wrong. She gave me this sugary, "Oh, you made it," and pretended like everything was perfectly fine. Dinner was stiff. Carla was laying it on thick, smiling too hard, laughing too loud, showering everyone in fake charm. But you could feel it, this undercurrent of nerves. Rachel sat beside me and gave me a subtle nod. We both knew it was only a matter of time. Once dinner was done and people started moving toward the living room, I stood up. The whole place fell quiet, like even the walls knew something was coming. I looked straight at Carla and said, "We need to talk about what you've been saying about me." She froze, just for a second, then slipped into a fake confused grin. "What do you mean?" she asked, laughing like I was overreacting. She tried to play it off, said I was being dramatic, that it was all a big misunderstanding. But I wasn't having it. I pulled out my phone, opened the texts from Rachel, and started reading, word for word, what Carla had said at her dinner party. You could hear the gasp ripple through the room. The second I started reading, Carla's expression morphed from fake confusion to full-on fury. She stuttered, trying to claim I had twisted her words or taken them out of context. She flailed her arms and launched into this weak defense about how gossip is just part of being a family and that I was blowing everything way out of proportion. That's when Rachel jumped in. She backed me up without hesitation, making it clear Carla hadn't just made a passing comment, she'd spent a good portion of the evening dragging my name through the mud. A few relatives nodded quietly while others just shifted in their seats, clearly wishing they could disappear. Realizing she was cornered, Carla went on the attack. She turned it back on me, acting like I was being a hypocrite. "It's not like you've never talked about anyone," she said. "Everyone gossips, why are you targeting me?" That's when I stood my ground even harder. I told her this wasn't just casual chatter, it was targeted, calculated, and cruel. This wasn't a one-off thing. This was a pattern of her tearing people down behind their backs over and over again. And I wasn't about to let her get away with it anymore. I brought up some of the other things she'd said, like how she once called my mom greedy and selfish. That landed hard. My mom's face went pale, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. She tried to laugh it off, but the pain was right there. Carla's husband looked completely blindsided, and I noticed the whispers start up around the room. Then the dam really broke. One of my cousins admitted that Carla had shamed her for traveling instead of settling down. Another cousin shared that Carla had made snide comments about problems in her marriage, which had caused actual fights between her and her husband. With every new confession, people started getting braver. It became clear this wasn't just about me. This was about years of Carla planting little bombs and walking away. And then came the moment no one saw coming. Carla's niece, clearly upset, finally spoke up. She confronted Carla directly about those cheating rumors. "Why would you say something like that without proof?" she asked, her voice shaking. Carla's excuse? She claimed she was just worried, that she thought her niece deserved to know. But that excuse fell flat. The room exploded with anger, voices rising all at once. Sensing the tide had turned, Carla grabbed her purse and tried to make a dramatic exit. "I don't have to sit here and be attacked," she snapped, heading for the door. But I wasn't about to let her walk away that easy. I stepped in front of her and told her she wasn't leaving until she faced what she'd done. She rolled her eyes and muttered something about being ambushed. I stood firm. I told her I wanted a real apology, not just for me, but for everyone she'd hurt. But Carla wasn't budging. She doubled down, acting like she'd done nothing wrong. Her husband and a couple of her usual supporters tried to smooth things over, but it was too late. The damage was already done. People had picked sides. Some defended her, saying she didn't mean to hurt anyone and that family should stick together. Others were right there with me, saying this reckoning was long overdue. Before I walked out, I told Carla this wasn't finished, that her toxic behavior wasn't going to stay buried anymore. She let out this bitter laugh and warned me that I'd regret turning the family against her. As I stepped out the door, I could still hear the chaos behind me, voices raised, people arguing. The family, once a messy but united unit, now felt split right down the middle. And Carla? She was still clinging to her self-righteousness like it could shield her from everything. But deep down, we all knew it wasn't over. Update 2. The fallout hit fast. By the next morning, my phone was practically vibrating off the table. Calls, texts, DMs. They all came pouring in from different relatives, each with their own take on the drama. Some were reaching out to thank me for finally standing up to Carla. Others were trying to guilt me into backing down, saying I'd stirred the pot too much. A few tried to sit on the fence, calling it a family misunderstanding that should be put to rest. But it was clear whatever dam had been holding things back had finally burst. The stories started coming out one after another. A cousin I hadn't talked to in ages called me up to share how Carla once spread a lie that her teenage daughter was acting out. It wasn't true at all, but it caused a huge mess in their home at the time. Then another relative told me Carla had borrowed money a few years back, promised to pay it back, and just never did. She stayed quiet about it because she didn't want to make waves. That was the pattern. Carla caused the damage, and everyone else swallowed it to keep the peace. The more I listened, the clearer it became. This wasn't petty family gossip. This was years of manipulation, control, and emotional sabotage. Rachel, ever the strategist, suggested we start a group chat so we could all stay connected and compare notes. We kept it small at first, just me, Rachel, my mom, and a few trusted cousins. But word spread fast. Pretty soon, the chat blew up. More family members joined in, and the stories just kept coming. Carla would gossip to one person about another, blending just enough truth with lies to make it stick. It was like she got some kind of thrill from watching people fall out over her rumors. Apparently, Carla caught wind of the group chat, because within days, she was on damage control mode, calling up relatives one-on-one, painting herself as the poor, misunderstood victim. For some, it worked. A few people left the chat, saying they didn't want to get caught in the middle. Others stuck around but stayed silent, probably unsure of where they stood. Then came the moment that changed everything. One of my cousins had recorded a phone call with Carla. In that recording, she flat out admitted to fabricating parts of the cheating rumor. She said she was just worried and wanted to spark a conversation. That was it. The second that audio clip dropped into the group chat, the last bit of doubt vanished. It was like tossing a match into a room full of gasoline. By now, the family was in full-blown crisis mode. So I made a decision. With Rachel by my side, we decided it was time for another sit-down. But this time, it wasn't about dinner or small talk. We were going to confront Carla again, and this time we had backup. Everyone in the group chat got an invite. Most of them came, some out of curiosity, others because they were finally ready to stop letting Carla's behavior slide. We weren't coming to argue. We were coming to hold her accountable, with receipts, with stories, and with the truth. At first, Carla refused to come. She called the whole thing a witch hunt and said she wasn't going to participate in what she saw as a public shaming. But once she found out how many relatives were planning to show up, she changed her tune. She showed up after all, husband in tow, and he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. The moment the meeting kicked off, my niece and her husband took the floor. They wasted no time confronting Carla about the cheating rumor. They explained how the lie had put an enormous strain on their relationship, leading to sleepless nights and fights over something that wasn't even real. Carla tried to shrug it off, playing the concerned aunt routine. She said she was just trying to look out for them, but no one in the room was buying it. Her niece's husband, normally one of the most soft-spoken guys in the family, cut through the noise and told her straight up. What she did was completely out of line. Then my mom spoke. She addressed the awful things Carla had said about her, calling her greedy and selfish behind her back. For years, my mom had always stood up for Carla, even when it meant brushing aside her worst moments. But this time it was different. The hurt in her voice was impossible to miss. Carla tried to play it down, claiming her words had been taken out of context. But my mom wasn't letting it slide. She stood her ground. As more people shared their own stories, Carla started to unravel. First, she insisted everyone was just misunderstanding her. Then she fell back on her usual excuse. That gossip is part of family life and everyone does it. But when someone brought up the audio recording, the one where she admitted to fabricating a rumor, she had nowhere left to hide. That's when the waterworks started. Carla burst into tears, claiming the whole room was ganging up on her and that she was the one being mistreated. A few relatives tried to comfort her, but most of us had reached our limit. Someone suggested she apologize. Really apologize, not just to me, but to everyone she'd hurt over the years. Instead, Carla doubled down again, saying she hadn't done anything wrong and we were just being overly sensitive. That was the breaking point. Some family members stood up and left on the spot, saying they wouldn't speak to her again until she owned up to her behavior. Others stayed behind, caught in limbo, not sure what to think. Carla stormed out, tossing a snide remark about how she didn't need toxic people in her life. But it didn't stop there. Later that same day, she took her drama to Facebook. She started posting vague, passive-aggressive statuses for all her friends and extended relatives to see. Things like, "Funny how people turn on you when all you've done is care," and "Sometimes blood is the most poisonous thing of all." Naturally, her friends, who had no clue what was really going on, flooded the comments with sympathy. They called her strong. They told her to stay away from the haters. They didn't realize she was the one lighting the match in the first place. Still, for all the mess, the meeting had marked a shift. For once, people weren't just brushing Carla's behavior aside. The silence had been broken, and though we weren't out of the storm yet, it felt like we were finally moving in the right direction. Update 3. Exactly 1 week after the family meeting, Carla came back swinging, in the most over-the-top way possible. She sent a massive email blast to the entire family. It read like a bad soap opera script, melodramatic, self-pitying, and full of distortions. She painted herself as the helpless victim, claiming that I had masterminded a coordinated campaign to destroy her reputation out of jealousy. According to her, I was threatened by her strong personality and had been scheming for months to turn everyone against her. It wasn't just dramatic, it was dishonest. She threw in a bunch of half-truths and straight-up lies. She said I'd twisted her words, that everything she said had been misinterpreted. She even dragged Rachel into it, accusing her of being my co-conspirator in some weird family coup. Then came the cherry on top, an ultimatum. Carla ended her rant by saying that anyone who continued to support me or Rachel would be part of the problem, and that she wouldn't hesitate to cut ties with them. Cue the explosion. Relatives who were already skeptical of her started replying. All fast. They called out the lies one by one. Rachel's mom, who usually keeps her head down during family drama, sent back a long, calm, point-by-point breakdown that completely dismantled Carla's claims. Another cousin jumped in and asked the one thing Carla never addressed, why she hadn't mentioned the recording. You know, the one where she admitted to making stuff up. At this point, the email thread had turned into a full-on battleground. Some family members took our side. Others tried to stay neutral and begged for peace. But then came a twist I never saw coming. Turns out Carla had a mole in our group chat. Her brother, my uncle, had been quietly lurking, reading everything. Not just reading, though. He was taking screenshots and sending them to Carla, feeding her private conversations and giving her the ammo she needed to twist things. Rachel was the one who figured it out. She noticed Carla started referencing things she couldn't have possibly known unless someone was leaking from the inside. I confronted my uncle in private. And yeah, it got heated. He didn't deny it. Said he'd done it to keep things from getting worse. That he was just trying to protect his sister. I told him flat out his actions had done the opposite. That he'd made things worse by betraying everyone's trust. His response? A shrug. Family comes first. Translation. Even if Carla was wrong, his loyalty would always be with her. So I knew then, I couldn't count on him anymore. Meanwhile, my niece, still furious over the cheating rumor, dug up something else that changed everything. Apparently, the rumor hadn't just come out of nowhere. Years ago, she'd confided in Carla about a rough patch in her marriage. Nothing serious, just a tough phase they'd worked through. But Carla had taken that private moment and twisted it into a full-blown scandal. When my niece confronted her about it, the betrayal was written all over her face. Carla tried to play it off, said she didn't mean for it to get that far. But it was too late. The damage was done, and her niece let her have it. Every word hit like a punch. Then came the biggest blow of all. From someone no one expected. Carla's husband finally spoke up. The man had barely said a word through all of this. But now, he admitted that he too had been hurt by her. She'd shared personal things about their marriage with her friends, gossiping about him behind his back. You could see it the way Carla's whole posture changed. This time, she didn't have a snappy comeback. She just stood there stunned. That's when I realized we needed one more meeting. Not just with the usual circle, but with extended relatives too, people who hadn't been looped in yet. I figured if we were going to stop the cycle, we had to make sure everyone saw the truth for themselves. Carla refused the invite, claiming again that she was being set up. But honestly, her absence only made her look worse. The meeting was powerful. People who had been neutral finally opened up. One by one, they started telling their own stories of manipulation, gossip, and betrayal. The image Carla had built up for years was finally beginning to collapse, and this time, there was no covering it up. One of my cousins came forward and revealed something jaw-dropping. Carla had once borrowed money under the pretense of a medical emergency. But instead of using it for anything remotely related to health, she blew it on a shopping spree. Another relative spoke up and said Carla had spread a rumor that her son had dropped out of college when all he'd really done was take a gap year. With each story shared, Carla's carefully crafted image kept unraveling. By the end of the meeting, most of the family was finally on the same page. This wasn't just a string of innocent missteps. It was a long, disturbing pattern of manipulation and deceit that had gone unchecked for far too long. Carla's reaction? Predictable. She jumped back on Facebook and started posting passive-aggressive messages like, "Some people live for drama and minding your own business is free." Then she got bolder, tagging relatives, dragging private issues out into the open for all her friends and followers to see. But it backfired. Even relatives who had stayed neutral started drifting to our side. They could finally see that Carla wasn't going to change, that she'd keep dragging people down as long as no one stopped her. Then came the real bombshell, one that made everything else feel small by comparison. A cousin revealed that Carla had been borrowing money from multiple family members for years. And not just small amounts, thousands, over time. She always had a different excuse: rent, emergencies, medical bills. But when we compared notes, we realized something chilling. Carla had been using the money to fund her image, designer clothes, over-the-top parties, weekend getaways. All while lying through her teeth. Once it all clicked into place, I knew we had to do one final thing. We had to confront her properly, once and for all. Update 4. We scheduled the final meeting. This time, it wasn't about venting frustrations or comparing stories. It was about holding Carla accountable completely and publicly. Not just for the lies and gossip, but for the financial damage too. We chose Sophie's house for the gathering. She was one of the relatives Carla had borrowed from, so it made sense. Once the word got out, nearly everyone who had been hurt by Carla's behavior agreed to come. A few days before the meeting, Carla caught wind of it. She started sending out frantic texts and emails, begging people not to go. She claimed she was the target of a smear campaign and said she'd cut off anyone who showed up. But instead of scaring people away, it just confirmed everything. The more she tried to control the situation, the more obvious it became that she had something to hide. When the day finally came, we packed into Sophie's living room. Tension buzzed through the air, equal parts nerves and fire. I started off by laying out the facts, messages, the recorded confession, and the long list of financial loans Carla had never paid back. And then came the biggest shock of all. I revealed that Carla had taken thousands of dollars from Grandma. Quietly. Over years. And Grandma, who had always been one of Carla's biggest defenders, was now struggling financially because of it. The room went completely still. Then Grandma spoke. Her voice was shaky but clear. She admitted she'd given Carla the money out of love and pressure. That every time Carla came to her, it was with a new sob story. And every time she believed her. Carla had promised to pay her back, but never did. Grandma said she hadn't said anything before because she didn't want to split the family apart. That moment changed everything. The silence broke. Every person in that room realized we had reached the line and Carla had crossed it a long time ago. The decision was unanimous: enough was enough. Carla had to take responsibility, and it had to start with repaying what she owed. Then, right in the middle of everything, Carla walked in. She wasn't invited, but that didn't stop her. She barged through the door, fuming, accusing us of conspiring against her and screaming about betrayal. Same old playbook. But we were done playing. I stood up and calmly walked her through the evidence. Every message, every quote, every dollar accounted for. At first, she tried to dismiss it all. Claimed it was all a misunderstanding. That we twisted her words. But this time, there was no room to hide. We had receipts, literally. That's when she exploded. She lashed out at everyone in the room. Accused people of turning on her. Dug up old arguments. Pointed fingers. But none of it stuck. Her shouting didn't scare anyone anymore, it just proved our point. Then came the biggest twist of all: her husband stood up. For the first time in all this, he finally said something. He looked around the room and said he couldn't support Carla anymore. That her lies and manipulations had affected him too. He said she'd even gossiped about him behind his back to her friends, sharing private details about their marriage. You could feel the air leave the room. He said he was done. That after years of emotional control, he was walking away. Carla collapsed into tears. In between sobs, she confessed that deep down she'd always felt insecure. That gossiping about others made her feel powerful. It was the first time any of us had seen that side of her. But it didn't undo the damage. Despite the tears, despite the confession, the family wasn't ready to forget what she'd done. We told her she needed to make things right. Apologize to each person she'd hurt. And most of all, repay the money. But instead of accepting that, she stormed out again. She screamed that we'd regret this, that we'd turned our backs on her. Then she slammed the door behind her like it was the final scene of a soap opera. And maybe it was. In the days that followed, things finally started to shift. Without Carla around, our family gatherings felt lighter, calmer, real. People started reconnecting. Cousins who hadn't spoken in years hugged it out. My mom smiled more. Grandma finally stood firm and said Carla wouldn't be getting another cent from her. Carla, meanwhile, kept spiraling. She continued airing her version of the story on Facebook, but fewer people were paying attention. Her posts stopped getting likes. Family members quietly unfriended or blocked her. Even her closest allies began to back away once they saw the full scope of her actions. And me? I felt at peace. Standing up to Carla hadn't been easy, but it was necessary. Watching our family finally break free from her grip, seeing us start to rebuild, it was worth every awkward conversation and sleepless night. For the first time in a long time, it felt like we were finally living without her shadow hanging over us. And I'll tell you this, I don't regret a single thing. Carla's grip on the family had finally loosened, and honestly, we were all better for it. Update 5. It's been a few months since that final showdown with Carla, and things have mostly settled. Our family gatherings feel different now, lighter, more peaceful, and a lot less tense. Without Carla constantly stirring the pot, people are reconnecting. Relationships that had been worn down by years of whispers and tension are slowly being repaired. Even Grandma, who used to jump to Carla's defense at every turn, seems calmer. There's a visible ease in her now that wasn't there before. But Carla? She didn't exactly vanish. In the weeks after everything went down, she started reaching out to people one-on-one. Phone calls, texts, she even contacted my mom. Each time, she tried to rewrite the narrative. Claimed she was misunderstood. Said she never meant any harm. That the family had blown things way out of proportion. But for most of us, her words didn't mean much anymore. We'd seen enough. Heard enough. We weren't going to let her sweet talk her way back in. As a group, we came to an agreement. Everyone had the right to forgive or not, but we wouldn't let Carla's behavior slide anymore. If she started spreading lies or trying to divide people again, we'd shut it down immediately. Even Grandma, after a lot of soul-searching, made a big announcement. She was done lending Carla money. No more excuses. No more guilt-tripping. That might have been the biggest shift of all, considering how much she'd supported Carla in the past. Cut off from her usual safety net, Carla started to feel the pressure. Word started going around that she was having trouble keeping up with her lifestyle. Overdrawn accounts. Maxed out credit cards. Bills piling up. And this time, no one was coming to her rescue. Those of us who'd once given her loans made it clear that chapter was closed. Then something unexpected happened. Carla's daughter, who'd been estranged from her for years, reached out to me. She'd heard about everything that went down through family chatter and wanted to say thank you. She told me stories about growing up with a mom who manipulated everything and everyone. How it had taken her years to break away and create a stable life of her own. Listening to her was both validating and heartbreaking. It reminded me that this wasn't just about extended family gossip, it went far deeper. Meanwhile, the people who'd been caught up in Carla's drama were finally finding their way back to each other. My niece and her husband, who'd been blindsided by that cheating rumor, decided to go to couples therapy. They were working on rebuilding trust, one step at a time. She told me that cutting Carla out completely had been like removing a weight from their relationship. The healing was real. And as more of the story spread, even people outside the inner family circle started to learn the truth. Distant relatives. Old family friends. The cracks in Carla's perfect image were now too wide to ignore. Her fan club was shrinking fast. She still had a few die-hard defenders, but most people finally saw her for who she really was. Then, like clockwork, she tried to make a comeback. She sent out a text to a handful of us, including me. It was, well, technically an apology, but barely. Full of lines like, sorry if I hurt anyone, and I didn't realize how my words would come across. It was vague, impersonal, and lacked any real accountability. Most of us ignored it. For me, this wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about breaking the cycle. I reminded the rest of the family what we tolerate is what continues. We couldn't control Carla's choices, but we could absolutely control our response. That meant setting boundaries. Real ones. A lot of us either limited contact with her or cut ties altogether. On social media, people started blocking her. Her cryptic posts, once magnets for drama and comments, started getting ignored. Without an audience, her fire started dying out. As time passed, her isolation became more obvious. Rumor had it she was trying to find support from friends outside the family, but that didn't seem to go far. The people who knew her well were already cautious. And those who didn't? They didn't want to be pulled into her mess. Meanwhile, our family moved into a new chapter. More than one relative has pulled me aside to say how thankful they are that someone finally stood up to her. Some said it gave them the courage to speak out too. They've credited me with helping us all come together again. I'm not looking for praise though. I never saw myself as the hero in this. But I'll admit hearing that meant something. It showed me that speaking up mattered. That all the awkward confrontations and emotional exhaustion had led to something real. Looking back, I feel relieved. The toxic cycle Carla had kept spinning for years is finally broken. Our family feels healthier, stronger, more honest. There's still work ahead. Healing doesn't happen overnight, but we're heading in the right direction. And in the end, this wasn't about revenge or proving a point. It was about protecting the people I care about. Making sure none of us had to keep living in the shadow of one person's dysfunction. These days, when we gather for birthdays, holidays, or just Sunday dinners, the difference is like night and day. The laughter is real now. The conversations feel genuine. For the first time in a long, long time, it actually feels like we're a family again.